started. So Richelle, let me know when you've got those slides up and open, and I will launch them at that time.
Okay, the email just arrived, right on target. So I'll just open it up here.
All right, I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, me too. Thanks for getting us all set up and inviting us to be here tonight.
All right, well, let's get started then. Welcome everybody to Husky Bites. This evening's Husky Bites is again sponsored by Mike and Karen Gregory. Thank you so much for your generous contributions. This is a free weekly webinar, and we will, this is season 4 of Husky Bites. It's sponsored by the College of Engineering here at Michigan Technological University. And my name is Janet Callahan, and I'm the Dean of the college. Next slide. All right, so this has been our menu for the fall, and we are, here it is November 1st, and we are in the Sustainability Demonstration House, and we're going to be learning a lot about it this evening. I'll be introducing Richelle Winkler in just a moment, but we also have 2 student co-hosts who will be introduced as well. Next slide. Again, thank you, Mike and Karen, for your match. They are recognizing the leadership of Frank Chernowski, who is a former advisor at Michigan Tech, a really early advocate for sustainability principles, and he impacted many students before dying in 1971. And so this award is in his name, and they are matching dollar for dollar up to $10,000. And so if you would like to give, you're going to go to mtu.edu/givenow/designation 5450. Next slide. So our next speaker up next week is going to be, Greg Odegaard, who is the John Holquist Endowed Chair in Computational Mechanics. He is in what we call the MEME department, which stands for Mechanical Engineering, Engineering Mechanics, with co-host Bill Predavon, who is the chair of MEME. And he's going to be talking about the new materials that we will be needing, and we are developing. We are, modeling in order to be able to do something like a mission to Mars. So I'm really looking forward to that. And next slide. So this is my cue to thank you, and also to let you know, as the webinar goes along, if you have a question, there's a Q&A feature that you can find by bringing your cursor down, and the Q&A feature will pop up, and just type your questions in there, and you can do them as we go along. And thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. All right, so Richelle, go ahead and stop sharing my slides and start sharing yours. So I would like at this time to introduce my speaker and co-host, Dr. Richelle Winkler, who is a professor in sociology and demography. She is the advisor for Michigan Tech's Sustainability Demonstration House, which you might hear us calling the SDH. She also helped start the house back 5 years ago in the 2016-17 academic year. This house is a residential learning environment that is net zero energy and net zero waste. And we're going to learn about how they managed to achieve that as we go along. Dr. Winkler's teaching and research focus is on migration, on community engaged scholarship, on environmental sustainability, and more. And I would love to hear you talk about your work someday, Richelle, but a little bit more about Richelle. She grew up in Indiana, between sort of Rush and Shelby counties, or in both of them, I guess. She's been in Houghton 10 years now. Loves hiking, rock hunting, mountain biking with her dog Opal, family, friends. She is a volleyballer. She plays volleyball and coaches volleyball. She's a Packer fan and a Wisconsin Badger, and she is also in addition to being all those scholars, she's also a mom and partner. So thank you so much, Richelle, for speaking with us this evening, and I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And welcome everyone. I'm really glad to have the opportunity to be here. I appreciate the invitation. And I'm really excited to be able to share a little bit about the Sustainability Demonstration House, because this is something that I've been really passionate about. I've worked together with Jay Meldrum, as Janet mentioned, about 5 years ago. We got the idea to start a Sustainability Demonstration House here at Michigan Tech, where we have student residents who apply to live in the house. And we think of it as something like a living laboratory where students are learning how to live sustainably, trying out new technologies and new techniques, keeping records on how they work, and sharing all that information with one another, but also more collaboratively with the broader campus community and then the broader community around that, working closely with many organizations and corporations who donate materials to the house as a way to sort of test out new things and to share new sustainable products that other folks may want to learn from. And so the idea behind this house, its purpose initially was, we could think about building a brand new house and make it just really airtight and super sustainable, because we know how to do that now, right? But we didn't want to do that because most people don't live in those kinds of places. Most of us out there in the world are living in a place that's already existing, that may not have been built, designed to be particularly sustainable. And so that's kind of where we wanted to start with. We have a house on campus that the students will tell you some more about. It was built in the 1950s, not a time period when people were thinking a lot about designing for efficiency or sustainability. And so it's really not a perfect place. But the idea was to do the best we can and to keep making it better. And to test out ways that all of us can build sustainable practices into our lives. And the idea is really about continuous improvement, doing better, and finding ways. So the students live there together. They have an opportunity to practice sustainability in their daily lives. And we think that this will really help build lifelong habits in a really supportive environment. The purpose is also to build community, both within the house, but also across all the partners and across the broader community as well. Outreach and engagement is a really important component of the house, so that students living there are not the only ones impacted, but instead they're inviting the rest of us across campus into the home to learn from what they're doing, to share ideas, and to help the students in the house improve their practices, and then also across the broader community as well. So you can see a picture of the house here on a nice fall day. This is the back side of the house. I mentioned that practice is a big part of what the students are doing. And what I mean by practice is that they're practicing sustainability just in their lives. But they're also implementing a lot of different projects that are really aimed at changing the daily systems in the house of like how we get our needs met to make those systems more sustainable. And then I mentioned outreach and engagement with the broader community is really important. And some of the images you see on this slide are examples of that. The students maintain a really active Facebook page that I would encourage you to follow and share, where they're always posting like new examples of sustainable practices that they're learning about or that they're trying out. And they do things like hosting others for yoga parties and holding workshops where families and kids can get involved in practicing. And the funding model for this house, the students pay to live there, but they do pay a somewhat reduced rate. And that's because they're working really hard. They're doing so much for our broader community. And so they get to live there for a little bit cheaper than they might otherwise living in the dorms, but they're constantly giving back. And the way that we fund a lot of the projects in the house is that we've had some really excellent corporate sponsors who've donated things that the students will tell you about on the tour, and you'll get to see them. But we also do have this Superior Ideas, which is a crowdfunding source. where we, ask folks to contribute something to help implement these projects. And a lot of the funding we raise here goes towards some of those workshops and broader engagement practices. And so that's another way that we look for funds. So right now we have 6 tenants living in the house. That's typical. There's a picture of all of the student residents. They're all 3rd and 4th year students and graduate students. The house is really student run. These are leaders in the community. There's very little that I, as an advisor, need to do for this house. The students are like really taking care of things. They also partner closely with the Alternative Energy Enterprise. So there's that enterprise group. There's one team that works really closely with the house and helps them to implement new systems. Like right now, they're working on a redesign of the old heating system, which really needs some updates, and looking at how we can do that better. But also, the campus and even the broader community across Houghton and Hancock and the whole region, we really consider our partners in this project. And I am going to go ahead and turn it over to 2 of the student residents, Abbey Herndon and Kendra Lachcik, who are going to continue on this presentation, tell you more about the house and give you a tour.
Hello, everyone. My name is Abbey Herndon. I'm a 3rd year and I'm studying sustainable bioproducts, and I moved into the house in January.
My name is Kendra. I'm a 3rd year environmental engineering student, and I also moved into the house this past January. So this is my 2nd semester in the house. You can go to the next slide, Richelle. So first we wanted to start off with some of the history. So as Richelle mentioned, the house was built in the 1950s. It was built in 1953 by the Herman Gunlock Inc. And that family has a lot of history in the Keweenaw area. So Herman Winks Gunlock owned the construction company, and this house was built for him. He designed the house, and him and his family, his wife and his 4 daughters lived in the house for a few decades. So the house was initially built for them. And then in 1992, Herman and Barbara Kettle Gunlock donated the house to Michigan Tech, since it was so close to campus, and they wanted to give back to the community. So since 1992, the house has been university property and still is. After that, it became the president's house. So if you were here in the 90s, that's what it was used for. The 2 presidents resided in the residence. And then the 3rd one, they said it was outdated. Don't really know for sure, but he did not live here. After that, it was mostly empty for about 10 years or so. There's kind of like a little bit of back and forth there with who was living there. But for a while, it was just used for social gatherings between probably the mid 2000s to about 2015 or 2016 when our project started. So really right before this became the Sustainability Demonstration House, it was kind of a wasted space in a sense, that it was mostly just kind of used for social gatherings, just for different things. And it was just kind of sitting there, and there wasn't really a constant use of the house. And so, as Richelle mentioned earlier, that is one thing with retrofitting, is that you're taking a space that already exists and then turning it into something new. And so that's kind of been the goal of taking what we have and trying to improve upon it. So in 2016, the Alternative Energy Enterprise proposed transforming the residence into a net zero energy, zero waste house. And that's when the project was approved. And they think gave us 5 years or something for this project to exist and to move forward with it. And then in the fall of 2017, the first group of tenants moved into the Sustainability Demonstration House. We're now in the fall of 2021, so entering the first 4th year of tenants living in the house.
So one of our sustainable systems that is extremely useful to us is our solar array. And it's right when you come in, driving into Houghton or onto campus, you can see it. And so it is an 8.6 kilowatt solar array. We have 2 arrays, and there are 32 260 watt modules. And we have 2 batteries in our basement. Both are 10 kilowatt hours. And then so if the power goes out, we can use our own solar energy for power, and it has a smart system so that if the power does go out and we're only on solar and our batteries are running low, it'll only turn on the lights and power in the kitchen and the laundry room so that we can still use the things that we need in our house and not be like wasting energy, like if someone's got a bunch of lights on in their room or something. And it was installed by Peninsula Solar. We also have 32 optimizers, as well as one inverter that converts DC to AC. And for the angles of the solar array, we have them at about 20 to 30 degrees in the winter, so that, or we switch it to 20 to 30 degrees in March and April, so that they can get more sunlight. And then in the winter, we have a much steeper angle, about 65 to 70 degrees. And that allows for the snow to slide off. We also get a lot of reflection off of the snow from the hill that's on the other side of the highway. And then on the other side of this PowerPoint, you can kind of see the whole last year of our usage of our solar array. So you can see how much is produced and then how much we've used. It produces significantly less in the winter, which is unfortunate, but that's just the climate of here. But in the summer, almost all of the energy that we use comes from our solar array.
Nice. Bees, I'm seeing bees.
Sorry, I was muted. So this is a more recent project. We got this beehive this summer. Joe Azzarello, who is now the advisor of the Alternative Energy Enterprise, him and his wife have like 6 or 7 beehives at their house. And so he was very instrumental in getting this up and running. So he kind of helped us get the beehive started, and then they brought it over to the house over the summer. So we have this beehive. There's a picture of us by the beehive. We have to feed them sugar water. There's also pollen. We're just helping to promote bee populations. And since the hive just started, we won't be able to harvest honey until next fall because the hive needs to establish itself. But once it does, we'll be able to harvest our own honey.
So another thing that we do at the SCH is community and campus outreach. So we have our open houses. We have 2 per semester. We already had one so far, and it was a success. That was on October 2nd. We had lots of people come check out the house. And we'll be having another one on November 12th at 5 p.m. And we're really excited to see more people come and anyone who hasn't seen the house yet. And we also have our tenant selection open. So hopefully people who are interested in applying to the house will be able to stop by and check out the house. But this is a great way to get people from campus at MTU and people from the community to be able to check out all the different systems that we have going on in our house. And if they want to implement any of these things in their lifestyle or in their homes, that they have the opportunity to learn about it and get more information. We also do workshops. So we also had a workshop last week and it was pretty successful. We had lots of families come. About 13 families came and we had them building little starter herb gardens so that they could start growing herbs and then they could expand that eventually and have fresh herbs in their own home all year round. And then we also had beeswax wraps, which is like a replacement for saran wrap, like for food storage, like covering a container or like wrapping an avocado or something like that. It's made out of beeswax, of course, and 100% cotton fabric so that it's compostable once it's old and used and doesn't work anymore. But they last pretty long.
And then finally, here are a few other projects that we've done. Quite a few of these kind of sprung up during the pandemic of all things. Last year, we were not able to bring anyone into the house with workshops or open houses, so I had to get a little bit more creative with the projects that we did. Some of our former housemates, they put on a scavenger hunt last fall for people to participate in, and people would go to like different restaurants or places where there was recycling and things like that, sort of like sustainable gems, as we called them, around the Houghton and Hancock area. These people right here in the spring of last year, we did an adopt-a-plant program where we took milk jugs, cut them up, and then we melted it around a glass jar in the oven to make them into a little pot. and then filled it with soil, and then plants that we propagated in our hydroponics and aquaponics systems, which you will see later, and then gave them to people, mostly students at Michigan Tech. Right here, Rose is pictured with a volunteer. Rose is a very big part of Rose Turner, a very big part of the house for the past couple of years. This is at the first waste reduction drive that happened in 2020, and then we did another one in 2021 where we collected items, particularly that cannot be recycled curbside. So like plastic bags, granola bar wrappers, things like that. So things that typically cannot be recycled curbside that we could bring to other places. And then finally in the spring, we did an Earth Day dinner. We partnered with the McNair Dining Hall and had the majority of the food was plant-based, and we diverted all of the waste from the landfill, which was a little bit difficult because it was all we couldn't use reusable things because of COVID. So it was all like compostable plates and stuff like that. So, yeah. So with that, I think we will get started on the tour around the house.
Okay.
And this is a pretty picture. So
this is
pretty light out. So hopefully we'll be able to see a decent amount through the windows. We weren't sure what the light was going to be like at this time. So that is exciting.
All right, so let's stop sharing slides. Great. And I'm going to see if I can do this like we practiced. All right. So I have to not block the camera. All right, I think I'm doing it. All right, so I need to put my mask on. I'm not a resident of the house, so I have to. There we go. All right, I'm ready for, so I'm gonna switch my camera view so that it is pointing out. All right, so here I am in the living room. That is the beautiful view. And here come Kendra and Abbey. Hello. All right, so who's gonna get started? Abbey is. All right.
So here to start, we have our list of donors here. So all of the systems in our house are either donated to us by our wonderful donors, or they are constructed and designed by our own tenants.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody who has supported this beautiful house. Very nice.
And then above here, we have photos of all of our past tenants.
Very nice. Wow. Some of them may be on tonight listening.
Yeah.
And this is the entryway, basically, right?
Yes,
Where we
this is
enter.
just kind of like a nice sitting room. And then Kendra will take over and talk about the Let's Grow.
Cool. Okay, so if you guys want to come over this way, this is our nice big dining room, so it's good for entertaining. And I believe they added this section of the house in the 90s too. So like the original house, there was a wall right there. And then when Michigan Tech, they added this whole section here. So this is our Lettuce Grow. It was donated by the company Lettuce Grow. This structure is made of ocean plastic, and this is a hydroponic system. So that means that all the water is circulated throughout the whole thing, and it's more efficient than general farming since we don't need to add as much water to it as you would with typical farming practices. With evaporation, you still have to add water to it, but not as much. And then we'll add fertilizer, test the pH. As you can see, the little these things really tiny. There's not really much to it, and then the roots will drag out. If you look in there, there's some that are really huge. This one's kind of lame, but there's some that drag down like Rapunzel or something. So
looks like you've got tomatoes in there, and
yeah, we have kale, tomatoes. There's some peppers growing. It's doing pretty good right now, so it's fun. So you gotta remember not to buy kale from the store sometimes that we have it here. So and then we can see them. So there's the solar panels. So if you're wondering what those are for our house. And there's a conduit that that was bored underneath the bedrock up to our house because you cannot put personal power lines over a highway. But probably in the long term, that's the better solution because you don't have to worry about storms and trees and stuff like that. So definitely a better option there.
all right, here we go.
And then, so right here, we have our lights in our house. We replaced almost all of our lights with LED. We have over 130 light bulbs in this house, which is kind of insane. But we replaced them all, and it's been way more energy efficient.
And so in here we have a donation from Lachcik, and these are smart LED bulbs, and they work on Wi-Fi. So I can actually turn them on and off from my phone. So if I were to like leave or something, be like, oh shoot, I left the lights on, I could turn them off. But you can also change them. So if I wanted to change the color, or like, oh, it's too bright, I can make it darker, turn it on and off.
Make it blue.
There's
Ooh.
red and blue. So there's different colors, different themes. We like to make them like a nice warm color for when we're studying. But yeah, these have been really awesome. And we also have other LED light bulbs that are from Cree.
Really cool. I want to get these light bulbs and this
Yeah,
app.
there's like Christmas themes, Halloween themes. Makes it really fun. I love the lights. I'm excited with them. So yeah. So like I said, we can see everything, which is really great. So over here, on the right is our outdoor compost system. On the left, we have a garden right there. Doesn't always get used too much because there's winter here a lot of the time, but we do our best. So with the outdoor compost, that's where most of our food waste goes in the house. So we'll put our apple cores, our banana peels. We'll put like, from kale or whatever vegetables, things that we're cooking. A lot of things can go in there, as well as like paper bags or things like that. All of that can go into the compost, and then we can use that in the garden or in other places, like kind of a nice fertilizer. We also will get coffee grounds. We have a partnership with Siberia Cafe with the small one near Walmart. And once a week we'll go and we'll pick up their coffee grounds and bring them back here. So yeah. So
They
we'll have
make
that.
good compost, don't they?
Yeah. So in that, especially in the wintertime, will help warm up our compost. And then we also give some out to people in the community to use in their compost bins. So yeah, so there's questions about compost, we can answer them. But it's a great way to get rid of your food waste and not let it go to the landfill. So yeah, after garden, have a little deck there. There's some former workshops.
All right. There's a piano. You've got a piano.
Yeah,
Is any,
it is. Very
who
nice.
plays?
Not me. I mean, I can play like
Probably plays the most.
actually that's true, but we can. That's the way I'm always bad doing this. I have a good friend that is really good at playing it. It's really little.
There you go. All right. Here we go. We're entering the kitchen.
Yeah, so here's our kitchen. In our kitchen, we have lots of donations from Whirlpool. So here's our plaque from Whirlpool. They donated us 2 refrigerators. We have one here and then another one in the basement. We have our 2 smart ovens, our induction cooktop, our toaster, our lovely blender,
Ooh.
and as well as our washer and dryer and our Sarah composter.
Thank you, Whirlpool.
Yes.
Cool. And so
Yeah, so our induction cooktop uses a lot less energy than a traditional conduction cooktop. So how it works is that there are magnets in here and they spin around really fast, and it directly heats up the metal in the pot rather than just like the pot sitting on a hot surface. And it doesn't get hot without a pot. So if I turn this on, I can put my hand on here and nothing's gonna happen, and it's gonna yell at me. Like, there's nothing there. Like, it's not gonna yell.
it beeps, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, let me turn it on up higher.
It's like, where's my pot?
There it is. Okay, so it's not hot. I can touch it, and like you have a watch on, it doesn't do anything. But as soon as I put this on, you can hear it. So it starts going right away. We can actually boil water in 30 seconds. So like sometimes one of our housemates, Sammy, she'll come in here and she'll like get her tea ready, and she doesn't even have like her mug and her tea out before it's already boiling. And she's like, trying to turn it off. One's over there, go turn it off. Yeah, so it boils super quick, and like cooking things is really fast.
Very convenient.
Yeah, but if you were to touch it now, it's like a little bit warm. But yeah, and there's like virtually no heat loss, and it's also really small. So if I put my arm here, it's like this big.
Mhm.
Must be not even.
Nice.
And then our smart ovens here, they're touchscreen, which is cool, but we can also control them from our phones. So if you want to like preheat the oven while you're on campus, free from home, you can do that. Or if you left it on, which happens sometimes, then you can turn it off from your phone.
That's cool. That's really cool.
Awesome.
Very nice.
Oh yes, and then so here we have our Nutri Milk that was a donation. We received it this past April, I believe. We've been using it quite a bit. So we make a lot of like almond butter, peanut butter, lots of oat milk, soy milk, peanut milk even. So we haven't been having to buy as much milk from the store because we have this.
Very nice. I've never heard of one of those.
Yeah, it's pretty epic. Yeah, we go to the co-op down in Hancock and we can get like bulk oats and stuff and then make the milk. So we're not
Oh,
using little waste.
Very cool.
Speaking of waste, so further talking about our compost. So in the house, so we all of our food waste goes to the compost in some shape or form. This is for the outdoor compost bin that I showed you earlier that was outside. Some of our compost goes to Apple Acres, which is a local farm that takes it. And there's a student or Students for Sustainability that also helps organize that, and will collect compost for people around the community and stuff for them to compost. They'll bring it here, and then once a week someone will take it over to the farm for the chickens to eat. So that's really great for people like outside of our house or just in general to be able to compost. If they can't do it on site, they can have a bucket and collect it and bring it elsewhere. And this is Verma. We feed it to our worms, which we'll show you more later. We have Verma compost downstairs, but this goes to feed the worms. So pretty fun.
Feed the worms.
Yeah, and we're sometimes intentional about what goes where, because we usually put more like processed stuff to the chickens, but then we just give like fresh fruits and like or fresh veggies mostly to the worms. So kind of a little bit selective sometimes, but yeah. And then
Very
over
nice.
here, so once again with waste output, all the waste that we produce, the trash, recycling, and compost all gets weighed on our scale over there, and we keep track of it. So we have data from like the very beginning of the house. That was one of the first things that they did, was implementing the waste output system that we've been upkeeping ever since. Over the years, we've definitely gotten better too. Just like the more we've compost, and like most recently we've started eco-bricking some of our plastic waste, which I'll talk about in a second. But this is just like our basic curbside recycling. So just like cardboard, metal cans, hard plastic like this. And then plastic bags get a little tricky. You realize how much plastic is in your life even when you try to avoid it. So this we give to Trex. This is like all the stretchy plastic, like the bread bags, the Walmart bags, all this kind of stuff. This goes to Trex, which is a company that recycles them and turns them into decking boards. And with our waste reduction drive, we collected enough to get a bench. So we have a bench in the living room that's made out of plastic bags that was donated to us for collecting over 500 pounds of, 500 pounds, and that was it.
Wow.
Of this stuff, which is kind of crazy because it's really light. So
That's
anyway,
impressive.
and then also one thing to know, so there's a lot of other plastic that you cannot recycle curbside or give to Trex. So this is more like the stretchy stuff, but like this thing that had like something from a freezer or your grapes. Trying to think what else. Even receipts are not recyclable because they have like a plastic film on them, so you can't recycle them. Let's see, like one other example. So just like all the weird plastic. This is like from the top of just a random food container. All of this will put into an eco brick. We'll use a wooden dowel to stuff it, and once if you kind of see, I'm trying to squeeze it and I can't. So once there's enough plastic in it, it's pretty much like a brick, and we can use it as a building material. And Students for Sustainability, the student org I was talking about earlier, once we have enough, is going to build a bench. So we're getting there.
Nice.
But this definitely was something I think, at least here at the house, like a lot of us here on campus started implementing like last fall. And so that really helped us cut down on waste. And so of course you want to like not have any waste, but this has helped a lot, because otherwise a lot of this was just going to the trash previously, like last year. So this has been very helpful.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you pick up trash that's like out in the ground, bring it in here, or you're trying to decrease your waste?
Yeah, decrease. Yeah, with the waste reduction drive, that was kind of a community outreach thing to bring waste. But yeah, or sometimes like if I'm eating lunch, I'll like collect the compost from my friends and bring it back here or something like that. But so small things like that. But definitely really makes you realize how much waste. And with this too, like sometimes we'll put random things we don't really know what to do with in here too. Like when you have ice cream and there's like a little like plastic thing on top of it, or the margarine tub, like the more you think about it, yeah. So anything that won't want to put something wet in here, has a lot of food, so you want to clean it first and then put it in here. But want it to be dry, otherwise it will get moldy. But this is kind of like what it's being used for. It's not necessarily being recycled, so you can pretty much put anything in here that's like flexible enough and
To jam it in.
Yeah, yeah. So good stress relief. That takes a long time.
Nice.
So we'll head down to
All
the
right.
basement.
I hope our audience isn't getting dizzy from me moving around too much. All right, so we are going downstairs. I gotta hold on. Okay. Ooh, this is a nice basement.
Yeah,
Jeez.
lots of space. More windows
Very lovely.
off the side of the hill.
Okay, last step. There we go.
So here we have one of our in-home composting systems. So this is something really cool that people can implement in their home if they live like in an apartment, if they don't have a backyard, then you can use this. So what it really is just like a bucket of dirt that we put a bunch of worms in. So we have a lid that has air holes for them. And inside here you can see dirt and like food waste. So like Kendra said, we like to give them fresh foods like kale stalks or broccoli stalks. And we just dig down a little bit, add the food in, and then cover it back up. And you can kind of see
Show me a worm.
some worms in here.
Yeah.
All right.
So we started with about 500 red wigglers in here. There's probably a lot more.
Yeah.
that we produce. But we like to put in about an equal balance of carbon nitrogen sources. So we add in some paper whenever we add in a little bit of food waste. And these are like old takeout containers.
Nice. Very cool. Does anybody fish with those worms?
No. They're very useful to us. We want to feed them to fish.
All right.
So here we have our aquaponics system. This system was designed and built by a previous tenant. And so how it works is similar to hydroponics that Kendra explained earlier, except that you don't have to add anything but water to the system and fish food. So we have our fish that produce the nutrients that goes through all this tubing and into our grow bed.
There's actually fish in there.
Yeah,
We could probably have more, but
there's not too many because there's not a lot of places to get fish around here.
yeah, closest place is Marquette, so it makes it a bit difficult sometimes.
They're goldfish, right?
Yes.
There we go.
Yeah, so they produce waste and it comes over here, and then there's nitrifying bacteria on this clay media that produces, like, converts their waste into nutrients for the plants. And yeah, so we just threw in, like, this is a celery stalk from the grocery store that someone like ate all of, and we stuck it in here like last semester, like a long time ago, and it keeps growing and we keep eating it. So that's been fun. We have cauliflower. There's some mint in here. I think this is bok choy. But yeah, we grow lots of stuff in here and it grows pretty fast.
Nice.
Easy to propagate. That's how we propagate for the adopted plant.
Yeah. And so how it works is that this grow bed fills up with water, and then we have a siphon in the back here. And then once it fills up all the way, it'll drain completely out. And that way that the plants can keep getting new nutrients, and they're also not just like soaking in water.
Soaking in water. Yep. So they don't rot. Cool.
And then we have our grow lights. They turn off about like 9:30. They're on about 14 hours a day.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sorry, never mind.
And then
Yeah. So this is the hydroponic system. This is kind of the homemade version of the lettuce grow that you saw upstairs. That was built by a former tenant. And so it's pretty similar to the aquaponic system in that it's like for most part closed system. All the water in here stays in here. We do have to add occasionally for evaporation, but we do not have fish adding nutrients, so we do have to add like these to it in order for the plants to. So I guess like the fertilizer of sorts, in order for them to grow. Right now we're going mint and basil. We'd offer you some, but can't really get them over Zoom. But yeah, so this is the water tank in here where we'll add the nutrients, and it gets pumped up here. Through here, and then it just like runs down like this. So pretty easy. Once this also has grow lights that are on a timer. So
Very lovely.
yeah, it's the homemade version of what's upstairs.
I like it.
Yeah,
It's fun, and it's still daylight out. Look at the
I know.
look at the size of that oak tree. It's
Yeah.
massive.
So we have a really nice view. Kind of spoiled. Yeah, I know. When I told my aunt that I was living here, she's like, "You're living here?" All so we all joke that we're going down in our standard of living after this. So just a little
Well,
thing.
it-
Oh, this is for the beehive. So we have to put these on so we don't get stung by the bees. They're kind of fun.
Yeah, we
They
pretty
feel
much just
pretty
wear
cool.
these when we're messing with the hive.
Yeah.
So like when we're adding
Sugar
things to
water.
the hive and like opening it up, taking things out. When we prepared it for the winter a couple of weeks ago, we had to wear these because they were a little upset that we were going in there.
Yeah, we made the hive smaller so that they would have less space to keep warm.
Yeah,
in the winter
but
months.
usually when we go out there, like you saw the picture of us standing next to it, like they're usually pretty chill.
Probably
they're
because it's
gonna
getting
walk past.
cold, but yeah, that was kind of funny.
Yeah.
I mean, we got that photo, but normally you wouldn't be able to do that because they'd be all buzzing around.
Yeah.
Have this, and then there's the sugar we add. They eat like tons of sugar, and then there's like a smoker. It's like the atypical thing you think of when you think of like beehives. Is this thing. So, but we use this to like kind of like scare them. Sort of. This is where we're just like doing intense maintenance, so they do this all the time.
Yeah, it makes them think that their hive is on fire, so they eat a bunch of honey to like prepare to leave, but they kind of just get really full and slow because they're like so full of honey that they like chill out.
Oh,
And then we leave and they're like, oh, our hive's not on fire. And then they just throw all the honey back up. And they're
Great stuff. Yeah. And then you will drink like one, like we'll have like, so this is apparently gallon 8 pounds of water. You didn't know that, but we'll do like 1-to-1 ratio. So with this one, like 8 pounds of sugar to this, and then put it in there. And then once it got colder, we increased it to 2-to-1. So what, 16 pounds of sugar?
oh my gosh.
8 pounds of water. So they drink a lot. So, yeah. So with that, so that's been kind of fun this semester getting to learn. It's a newer system. So yeah, and hopefully we'll have honey soon. For that, we'll move to the back room.
This is my favorite part.
Yeah, it's really warm. Okay, so back about the solar array. So this are 2 lithium batteries that we use to like, if it's a bit cloudier and stuff, and we're maybe not necessarily producing as much from the solar panels, we can start pulling from the batteries too. So this helps like store energy. So it's like not necessarily coming like directly from the solar panels, but also from batteries. And this is the inverter that goes from DC to AC, I believe. Yeah. So this is the inverter has to switch the current in order for it to be usable by us. This is very helpful. So can I just want to see this funny. That's
Very
the boiler
cool.
system. The heating system's kind of.
This is the heating system that's going to
Yeah.
get replaced. Holy
Yes.
cow.
Yeah, it's a little
Oh,
yeah, pretty intense stuff.
that's a lot of copper.
Yeah. And then over here, do you want to
Sure. So here we have our flow meter, kind of hard to see, but we just added this into our pipes here and it tracks our water usage. So we have an app that we can go onto and we can see everything we do, like when we take a shower, when we use the
Oh, wow.
toilet, use the sink. And so it was kind of fun. We did some challenges last semester of like seeing how short you can get your shower, but like consistently, not just like one really short shower. But you can see how long it was and like how much water you used during that time.
That's impressive.
And it also knows if there's like a leak or something. It's like, well, this is unusual, and it'll turn the water off. So we'll
Nice.
get a notification that's like, you have 5 minutes, like there's unusual water usage, we're turning the water off, and you have to like run around the house and be like, what's happening?
Yeah.
And usually it's one of the toilets that's running, like, because they're old. So
Good
you have
to
run on
know.
those.
So when you go home, do you have a really long shower at home?
Oh, yeah, no, my shower's got a lot shorter.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, we can be more conscious about it. So
Yeah, but it's nice because those toilets do run and they use a lot of water, but this will turn it off and then we'll be able to go fix the toilet. So that's nice. And you just come down here and turn it back on.
Nice. Very cool.
And then we have something similar over here for it's called our curb, and it does similar things but with our electricity. So we can
Okay.
see like what rooms in the house are using electricity and how much. So that's kind of nice. You can like plug in your lights in your laptop and be like, how much electricity am I using right now? Am I using a lot? And you can kind of track that. So yeah.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, this is so awesome. Is there anything else?
I think that's pretty much it.
It's the main areas of the
There it
house.
is, yeah.
All right, so we are going to go back to our Zoom spots and we will be taking questions.
Okay,
Yes.
sounds
So
good.
we will all be joining you soon. So audience, let's turn this around. That was really fun to do a tour. So if you have questions, type them in the Q&A, and I hope you've already been asking questions. And between Richelle and Kendra and Abbey, I'm sure that there'll be answers to lots of your questions.
Yeah, I
Alright.
do see some questions that have already come in, Janet. And one of them that has come up a couple of times that I can answer really quickly is about where this house is located. So it's on the east side of campus. It's right near most of the dorms. It's on Woodland Drive. I did just type the address itself. in the Q&A in response to somebody's question. And so you should be able to see the address there, and you could probably map it on Google. But it's an easy walk to downtown campus, and kind of right when you're coming into campus from, say, Chassell, you see the big parking lot for the Rosé Center there, and that parking lot right when you're starting to come onto campus, that's where the solar panels are located. And then it's just right across the highway from those solar panels.
Other questions? So feel free. So Kendra and Abby, you can turn your mics on and feel free to pick a question, any one of you or Richelle. And so we're doing really well. We were afraid when our rehearsal, I asked so many questions that I got scolded. So they were like, we got to just do the tour.
Yeah.
So I tried to
Well,
be
one
quiet.
question that I've seen come up from several people too is a question about the compost and whether it smells. So I think I'll pose that to the students, and I'll let you talk a little bit about that. And probably it depends on which compost you're talking about. So maybe it's a question for each one, and does each one smell, and under what conditions?
Yeah, so for our outdoor compost bin, the one that we use the most, it actually doesn't smell too bad at all. Like, it has a slight scent, but it's not a bad scent. It also kind of smells a lot like coffee grounds because we put a lot of coffee grounds in there, and coffee grounds have a strong smell. But a healthy compost bin should not be stinky. The one in our kitchen, it's a little bit stinky if we leave it there for too long, but we usually just like use it so often that it's not bad. But once we get it outside into the compost bin, it's not bad at all. And same with our vermicompost. Like, I don't know, Janet, if you smelled it at all when we opened it up, but it doesn't usually smell bad because it's healthy, and the microbes in there are really working on it.
I didn't notice a change in odor when you opened the bin. Yeah. So
I think one of the big things with that is if you're not putting meat products in, then it shouldn't smell, right?
Yeah, so we don't usually put meat products in any of our composting bins. You're not really supposed to because it gets kind of rough if you put meat products in there. But you can put like eggshells and stuff in there, but not usually dairy.
So Walt, hi Walt, he says his first year at Tech in 1969, it snowed the first week he was on campus. It's like another snow story. And Harry wants to know, do we have a fire suppression system for the battery room? I don't think so.
We do not. So that may be something we should look into. I don't know if you know different Abbey, but yeah, as far as I know, I mean, I think the product itself probably has some sort of, I guess, fire like suppression, but I don't think we.
Yeah, I don't know the details on that, but I'm assuming that there would be some sort of something for that, since it is in like a Michigan Tech housing, that they would probably want some sort of protection from that.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing I saw a few questions about is the windows, and there are all these big windows in the house. So questions about, are they all south facing, and what does that matter? And then also maybe questions about efficiency related to the windows, and maybe how we can do better.
Yeah, so we actually have over 1,000 square feet of windows in this house, which is a lot. Those big windows you saw, all of the bedrooms have windows that big as well. And they're kind of on all sides of the house, really. But mostly like facing the portage, and then the opposite direction as well. So it's kind of like northeast and then southwest a little bit diagonal.
Are they double paned?
Only a few of them are. So that's another project that AEE, the Alternative Energy Enterprise SDH team, is actually working on, is replacing some of the windows and making them more efficient. Yeah, they're pretty old.
This one's double paned. So the big ones in here look like they're double paned.
Yeah, only a few of them are, but we actually have someone coming this coming week to look at the windows, a contractor to check them out.
So is this art by people in the house?
Yeah, we had a painting night.
That's awesome.
This is one of the things I think with the windows that is just another way that this house is like a real life house and a work in progress, right? So the students and all the teams are always working to try to do better, but it is a retrofitted place. And so, you know, it didn't start from a great place. And
It
there's
wasn't
always
designed.
more work to
Yeah.
do.
It was not
Yeah.
designed to be a zero energy house. There's
Yeah.
it's evident.
But, you know, that's how most of us are living, right? And so that's kind of the idea behind this is like, what can we do to continuously improve and keep working on it? And the windows are one of the next things on the list. There are also some questions about the heating system, and I know that's another thing on the list. So Ronald's asking what type of heating system it is and what would it be replaced with?
So it's currently a boiler, and the tenants haven't been working on that project as much because the alternative energy enterprise has been taking up that project. And I don't know all of the details, but I know they've been working on it quite a bit. So I'm sorry I can't answer that right now, but like, yeah, there's people working on it, and I would love to hear like how far they've gotten on it because I know that they've made some good progress.
There's a couple of just comments, one from Greg who remembers it in the 90s and what a great way, just that it's a great project for the campus to commit to high impact student involvement. So a compliment from Greg. And then Bill remembers the Gundlach's daughters. So how about that? One married a star hockey player who later was a professor on the East Coast. So, oh gosh, it's so nice to see all these people. So what is the biggest adjustment the housemates have made to conserve either water or power or improve sustainability? So maybe you can answer from your individual perspective. What is the biggest adjustment you've had to make, Abby?
Well, for the whole house in general, one of the first things the tenants did was they replaced all of the light bulbs with LED bulbs, like I mentioned. And they also replaced the shower heads and sink faucets because they had a really, really high flow rate. It was about like 8.9 for shower heads and 4.5 for sinks. And an efficient flow rate is about 2.4 for a shower head and 2.2 gallons per minute for a sink. That's like a significant difference. And that's something that they changed right away. And both of those things made a big difference in like saving money and resources. And then I would say personally, I've been reducing my waste a lot living in this house compared to like living in the dorms because I didn't have a whole lot of opportunities in the dorms. But now when I live here, I can compost in multiple different ways, and I have like the eco bricking and different types of recycling that I didn't have as an opportunity before.
How about you, Kendra? Your biggest adjustment?
Oh, for me, probably like I said with the waste, I think I was already pretty good about it, but definitely able to like really like try and aim for zero waste, which I think both Abby and I are both almost at for the most part. Abby probably a little more than me, but like almost all the way there, especially with the eco bricking, which I started doing like I guess probably about a month before I started moving into the house. And then like that definitely like was kind of like the last push I feel like to decrease my waste significantly. It definitely makes it easier living in the house, having compost being accessible and things like that. So that's been a real blessing.
You know, one of the things, I'm a sociologist, right? So I'm thinking about the social side, and I'm wondering if you can say anything about just the living environment, living with other people that are committed to sustainability and zero waste and to reducing your impact. Also, if you could talk a little bit about how that's impacted your own kind of behavior or finding it easier, or does it maybe not matter so much? And in what ways do your roommates influence you?
I would say one of the biggest influences from my housemates was when I moved in, like I became vegan like when I moved in. I had been thinking about it for a long time and like really slowly transitioning, but like when I got here, there are already 3 of the other tenants that were vegan. Kendra is one of them. And they really helped me on that. And like I learned so much from them about like why it's important and how much of a difference it makes. And then I asked for help on what I needed to do and just like worked on making that difference. But it's like been really encouraging to see other people doing that than trying to go through that journey on my own.
I know one of our other housemates, Chris, he came in like a semester before us and like didn't know how to cook at all. And then our housemates taught him and now he cooks and is vegan and like does all this stuff, which is great. So I think definitely depending on where you're at, like in your sustainable journey, kind of has like different, whether it's food or waste or your water usage or just like your outlook really. But it definitely is nice when we're all kind of like working together a little bit. Or something like, why are you throwing that away? Or like, why are you doing that? Like not
Yeah.
a little bit aggressive, but always trying to push ourselves to be better and do the best we can.
So can you explain, I mean, you're already composting the stuff outside. Why do you need the worms inside? That Robert is wondering about that.
So it's just kind of like another composting system that we wanted to explore and learn about. Our outdoor compost slows down a little bit in the winter, and with having like 6 of us eating like a lot of vegetables, it fills up pretty quick. So with our vermicompost, it helps us out a little bit because it doesn't freeze because it's in our house. But it's also a really great thing to show community members that may not have a yard to use for a compost bin.
Good point. Right.
And it's awfully nice to not have to take your stuff outside in the middle of Houghton's winters. I can say that from personal experience. That's the kids' chore in my house.
Well, and I guess we should assume you're buying your food from a grocery store, right? You're not growing your food, because there's just not enough to feed 6 people on the hydroponic system, right?
Yeah, so we have a few foods that we get from our hydroponics, especially our herbs. We have lots of basil and lots of mint, and we're growing a few more. We have oregano and thyme started up and a little bit of cilantro. So we don't really buy herbs a whole lot like that, but stuff like broccoli, cauliflower, that stuff takes a long time to grow and a lot of nutrients and space, and so it's a little bit harder on our lettuce grow system. But in our aquaponics, we have cauliflower growing. We grow some larger stuff in our aquaponics, but yeah, mostly like the kale is the big one that we eat from our hydroponics because it grows back pretty quick and a lot of it grows. So that's pretty nice. Nice.
And I can see, I know some of you are typing in questions to some of the answers, but if the questions are things that you think everybody would like to answer, that would be good. How long can the batteries sustain electricity to the house? If your power goes out, how much time do you have?
It definitely depends on how much they've got stored up. I don't know exactly how long, like if they were to be full. But
So
like I said,
I mean, you got more than a day probably, right?
I don't know exactly. Sorry,
that
but
would be an experiment you do then.
yeah. I mean, the power actually went out a couple of days ago. A transformer box blew on our street. And we were like, why isn't the lights in the dining room working? And then we were like, but the microwave works. But that was just because we were on our batteries.
So many people with solar panels put the extra energy back into the grid. You are putting it into your batteries, right?
Yeah, so we put it in the batteries. We're not completely off the grid because with MTU, they didn't want us to go off the grid in case something happened. But we don't give it back to the grid.
Okay. Richelle, pick a question.
Yeah, so Warren is asking about the sleeping quarters. We didn't see anything about where you all sleep in the tour for good reason. We don't expect you to show off your bedroom. But there's where you are now, right? But maybe you could just talk a little bit about, there's also a question that someone asked about what is the capacity. I think Robert asked about how many students could live in the house in maximum capacity. So maybe you could talk about bedrooms and capacity a little.
Right now, there's 6 bedrooms in the house, one of which is the master bedroom, which Abbey is in since she is the coordinator. So 5 of the bedrooms are on one side of the house, and then one is like the maid's corners, like by the kitchen back in the day. So there's 6 bedrooms, and then there's 4 bathrooms, one in the master, one in the maid's room, and then there's 2 upstairs. 5. Oh my gosh, I answered that wrong. There's 5. Because there's one downstairs too, like by one of our housemate, Sammy. Hers is kind of like, that one's not a full bath. So I guess 4.5.
There's 6 bathrooms.
6?
Yeah.
Wait, the basement. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we have the basement.
Sorry, we don't really
we
just put stuff in there.
Guest bathroom, the one in the master bathroom, and then 2 upstairs, and then the one in the maid's quarters. We have 6 bathrooms.
Yeah, whoops, answer
is
that.
kinda
right.
crazy.
Bathrooms.
Yeah.
No wonder
I-
the toilet's always running somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I can tell you too that when Jay Meldrum and I were first, thinking about starting up this project and putting students in the house, and we spent a lot of time talking about like, well, how many students should live here? We had said that we felt like really the maximum capacity was 10. But that would mean most of the students all sharing rooms, and some of the rooms are quite small. And also there were concerns just about the capacity of like the plumbing and having that many students living there. Initially, I think we started with only 4 students just to kind of get it rolling, and have felt like 6 is a really good number because the students really like have the space to have a little space for themselves, but at the same time, really working on the house a lot. And a lot of those bathrooms are just not really used. So
So this is a question from John to Kendra and Abbey. Have you gone home giving your parents advice to how they can make their home more sustainable?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Have they
Yeah.
listened to you?
My
Most
mom is like really into all this stuff, which has been really awesome. So I'm always like telling her like, oh, we should do this. What about this? What about this? And she's usually like, oh yeah, like how do I get started on that? Like we've started bottle bricking at her house. She's vegan too, and like all these little things that we start doing at our house because of like what I've learned here, which is really awesome.
There's so many, we're not going to be able to get to the questions. So I do encourage you to start typing answers to some of them while we still take a few more questions because we're coming up on the hour. But
I was
ahead.
just gonna ask her, I see a question from Bob about how did you get so lucky to live there? And I just wanted to say that the tenants, we go through an application process every fall. And so we're in that process right now for students who want to live in the house next year. And so it's actually a pretty extensive application process. Students fill out an application, but then they are invited, like the top tier, get invited to come to a like group activity day in the house, which the current tenants lead, and they kind of run the applicants through different group activities and get a sense for how well they work together as teams, and really like what their real interests, what skills do they bring to the project. And then there's also one-on-one interviews after that with both myself and the tenants do interviews. And ultimately, then we end up kind of ranking all of the applicants and invite folks to live in the house that way. So we've always had a waiting list. There's a lot of interest across campus, and we've had people from all different majors and backgrounds.
There's just a lot of people saying thank you, like wonderful tour of the house. Thank you for the tour. A lot of people didn't know this was being used for this purpose. So, I would just want to thank everybody who's speaking tonight. So Richelle, and Abbey and Kendra, thank you so much. It's been really awesome. And so we'll take one more question and then we'll just have some closing remarks from each of you. So do you have a question in mind to answer, Richelle?
Sure. How about Larry asked a question about what are some lessons learned from this project? Do you have like one each, maybe Kendra and Abbey, like a big lesson learned?
I don't know, there's a lot. I mean, overall,
Is there anything you've tried it that didn't work well, maybe?
Yes. I guess so far, or at least for me and Abbey, like there's a lot in the house already. And so upkeeping has definitely been a big thing for us that we're trying to focus on, especially this semester. We had like Rose Turner was a really big part of the house, and she moved out last semester and she did a lot, which is so great. And so just kind of like trying to feedback of like all that she's done in her legacy. But like sort of like thinking about like upkeeping what we have without getting too far ahead of ourselves and implementing new things, even though we may want to. Like something small I did this semester was planted some like perennial flowers near like the bee garden. So like there's like some small things that we can do, perennial plants, just like things like that. But also like trying to upkeep what we have, especially this semester, because that's what we kind of do have lessons in the house, and there's only so much we can do. We all have weekly chores to keep them up, but just kind of like just different mindsets of
Yeah.
how we approach things. So
And it's interesting because you do, I mean, you have all these projects, the plant projects, the fish, all these things that other people have left behind with instructions. So it's kind of
right.
like,
So once they're here, we want to maintain them. So like even though we want to implement new things, we definitely do have to kind of take a step back and like make sure that we're maintaining what we already have.
all right, very short.
And
closing
sometimes
remark.
it's the low tech things that make a bigger difference maybe than some of the high tech things as well. I'd say that's another lesson, right? Like it's always exciting to get like the cool products. And those can be really cool and they can really cut your consumption, but sometimes they introduce new consumption in new ways. And there are a lot of really low tech things that we can do as well that I think the house is doing a good job exploring.
Yeah, I also think like being open-minded about so many things is really helpful too, because like a lot of times we'll like think of any project, we'll be like, this is kind of like out of the norm, kind of seems weird or like could be really hard, but we start trying it and it like makes a really big difference in like our sustainable footprint.
Gosh, this has been such a thrill to spend the evening hanging out with you and learning about all of the sort of 5 years of projects or four full years of projects. So what do you think your legacy will be as maybe a closing remark? So we'll maybe from Kendra, what your generation, Kendra and Abbey, what will the legacy be from this year that you were
year
here?
after COVID? Just kidding, it's still COVID, but I think just trying to like keep the project going, keeping the momentum going while still inputting our new things. I guess one goal for this semester too, I think hopefully we'll have like a solid group of 6 for a whole year, which hasn't happened yet. So I think that's one thing. I think just like with the house getting started and then like COVID hitting was kind of a lot going on. So hopefully things can like smooth out.
So you guys do your change of roommates mid-year. So it's like spring and fall. Is that kind of is that your year?
So usually we try to keep all the 6 tenants for the spring or the fall and the spring, like the whole academic school year. But a lot of times people like they'll leave because of COVID or they got an internship or a co-op or something like that, which is really awesome. They should be taking those opportunities. But yeah, we might have all 6 tenants this whole year, which is kind of exciting.
And sometimes people graduate in December. So yeah. And sometimes we have new people move in January. Like I think both, Abbey and Kendra, you both moved in January, right?
Yeah.
That was a little bit of a shift, but it was a good shift. But I remember being like, that was a hectic couple of weeks / semester.
Well, again, there's a couple more compliments out there. This has been so enjoyable. I would just want to thank the entire audience, but especially our speakers for giving up some of your personal time and welcoming us into your home. So thank you so much for having a sustainability demonstration house and for being willing to share it with us. And so good night, everybody. And thanks again.
Thank you so much.
Thanks everyone for joining us tonight. And hey, look at this cool history. I think it's Bill Bowman said that Herman Gudenlock graduated from Harvard in 1937, the year he was born. He owned the concrete batch plant for the lift bridge. And Bill was a part-time highway department inspector at the time.
Wow.
Awesome.
There's a lot of history for sure.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Sue, for recording it. And we're going to be signing off now. So good night. And it is sunset here.
Yay.
All right.